A couple of weeks ago, we painted the other side of our narrowboat.
And it were a quick splash and dash.
It took us just 2.5 days, and that includes sanding, prepping and painting. This means from a distance the boat looks quite good, but the closer you get, the worse it starts to look. And when you get really close, you can see the marks left by the roller and lots of imperfections in the overall finish. We've now set ourselves the challenge to see if 2 DIYers on the side of the canal can get this side of the boat to a really good standard.
And get it as close as possible to a professional finish.
Overall then, we've worked out there's going to be a few things that we're going to need.
Time.
Time is probably one of the crucial things.
Yes.
This isn't going to be a quick job.
We're going to need right tools.
We are going to need the right tools, of which we've got some of them already.
Oh yeah.
But we're probably going to need to make sure we invest in some good quality brushes.
Yes.
Because you can't get a good quality finish if you're using cheap nasty brushes.
No. And we're going to need some knowledge.
We are going to need lots of knowledge, of which some of it we've already got up here from jobs we've done in the past, but we've been doing loads of research on YouTube and the internet as to the correct procedures and the correct way about going about things to make sure we get this finish as good as we can.
Yep. We're going to need a lot of patience, Peter.
We are going to need a lot of patience, especially from me, because patience is not really one of my virtues.
No.
But because this is a long job that is going to be spread over several weeks, and each stage of the job is very time consuming, I need to be patient and not rush. As we come to do each stage, we will obviously go into a bit more detail as to why we're doing each stage and what its purpose is. But in essence, there's going to be quite a few stages. We've got sanding the boat to start with, we've then got to rust treat the boat, we've then got 4 coats of primer to do, 3 top coats, and then adding any coach lines to it. And obviously each one of those stages has to be done on at least a separate day. So straight away you can kind of get in your head there, that's sort of maybe 9-10 days worth of work.
Without a doubt.
And we've got to include drying time and the fact that we're out and about on our boat and we want to enjoy our trip.
Yeah.
When boats are done in a dry dock and it's a full boat, they reckon it takes between 5 and 6 weeks to do that full boat. I think we're probably talking it's going to be spread out over that sort of time.
Just to
do our one side.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we've covered the basics there of what we're actually going to do. So I think it's now time to get these tools working. And let's get cracking.
Yes.
To get the best possible finish, we have to remove all the accessories off the side of the boat. And the first one of those is the registration plate. This was held on with pop rivets, and the only way to remove those is to drill them out. I started off with a small drill bit and gradually worked up in size until it was large enough to take the head off the pop rivet, but without damaging the registration plate itself. With that number plate removed, I've added an 80 grit sandpaper onto our rubber pad there, which will give a nice surface for sanding with. It does allow a little bit of flex so that if you start tipping the grinder, it doesn't gouge into the paintwork too much. I do still have to be careful with that, because if I do get it at too much of an angle, it will actually gouge into the steel and leave something that I'll have to fill at a later date. There are sections, like just on this corner here, that's really lumpy and bumpy from where it's been welded and things in the past. That's almost certainly going to need fillering in the future. And along these radiuses, some of those aren't quite right where the weld's been done. They're going to need a good bit of grinding, filling and sanding at a later stage. First thing though is, let's just get cracking with this, get the bulk of this paint off all the way down the side. For now then, I'm going to leave the windows in place. That obviously keeps the seal and stops the dust that I'm going to create from sanding going inside. I might as well leave it till the very end. Once I've got the whole side sanded down, can take the windows out, donor mask it up from the inside just to protect it from that last bit of dust, and then we'll do that bit last off. So I think it's on with the PPE, and let's get cracking. Just in that first section there then, you can see you're starting to see the history of the boat. It's obviously been red, green and had a cream coach line along it at some point. I'm leaving these edges as well because that'll soon chew up this sanding pad. So what I might as well do is get sort of 90% of the work out of this sanding pad that I can on the smoother sections, and then just sort of chew the sanding pad up by going over the really rough edges afterwards. I've only done a relatively small section there, but I can already tell this pad is now starting to lose its efficiency. So it's now the time where I can get these edges done and down along the bottom. It's where the obviously side joins into the gunnel. That's been welded and that tends to chew the edge of the pad up as well. The top section across there I'll do all by hand, because if you try doing that with the machine you almost certainly start digging in, gouging and taking chunks of steel out. That is the first battery flat already. You can see we've only done that amount of space. We've got the jackery set up with the solar panels. Hopefully there's enough sun to keep charging these batteries, because I've only got two. So now while I'm using the other battery, I now need to try and get this one charged. And this is where the first bit of my patience is tested, because obviously I want to get the job done, but I'm going to have to bunny up with these two batteries, and it's then making sure I'm not rushing to try and cut corners to get the most out of the battery life. Take my time, we'll get there. This top section here that's now shiny is quite a deep piece of weld. I think that's because obviously they've welded this back plate to the side plate, and then this handrail is a further piece that's also welded in, so there's obviously been quite a bit of welding in this area. It's struggling to do it with the normal pad, so I've got my really abrasive pad that I'm just going to run over that and maybe just down this little bit, because I can still feel that's not quite smooth. It's definitely going to need filler in this back edge just to bring it all nice and level. And this really is extremely abrasive and it'll rip through that steel in no time, so I have to be really careful and just sort of feather it in just to get it back far enough so that I can run that coat of filler in at a later stage. That's all keyed up nicely and at least tucked back below the surface where I'm going to want it, so that once I run that filler down I can get a nice smooth finish. let's get this hand sanding on the top done. The only benefit to doing it by hand is you get a much better feel for how things are, because you can directly feel it, obviously, and I can straight away tell there's lots of little lumps and bumps just on this curve. That's going to take a lot of fine tweaking with some filler. I've seen on one of the professional videos we watched, they got a company in, really skilled craftsmen, who used a grinder just to reprofile all this edge. By the time he'd done the whole length of the boat, it was absolutely perfect. I'm not sure my skills with the grinder are quite up to that though, so I think my option is going to be filling and sanding. After that initial sand over then, I can now start to pick out the areas that need more work. Probably even pick up on camera. That bit there is quite rough, so that needs more sanding over, and there's sections down here that are still quite rough. Some areas are now starting to get to the point where I'm quite happy with them, and again some areas where I've gone back down to the actual metal work is going to want the rust treatment, and that's setting up before we then do any further sanding. It's just a case of keep going. Patience, patience, patience. In an ideal world, we would have hired a scabbler and taken the entire boat back to bare steel to start afresh. However, the reality of doing the job on the side of the canal means this just wasn't a feasible option. I very quickly started to get a feel for the sander and realised initially I'd been sanding far too much paint off, because in essence all I'm looking to do here is key up the surface for the fresh paint and remove any major lumps and bumps. And part of that first section that I'd done, I took right back down to bare metal when I didn't need to. So now we're about halfway down the boat with the sanding. Thought if I get these three windows out down this end, because you've masked up inside now, haven't you? Yeah. We can clean up round them, and then you can start cleaning the dust off and things, and we can maybe start getting a bit of rust treatment on this end of the boat. Yes. How much are we betting whether these screws all just come out nice and easily and the window pops out?
It's gonna do. Yes, let's think positive.
Yes, positive thinking. Well, that's a promising sign, but maybe that's just lulling us into a false sense of security. The issue we've got with windows as well is there's 5 windows on each side of the boat, but they don't all match, do they?
No, that's quite irritating.
So these back 3 are all the same, then we've got one a little bit further in front that's a chrome window, and hence it's been painted in the past to make it match the boat, and then right at the front there's another one that's the same as the chrome one but in a brass finish. So all 5, well, there's 3 match, then the other 2 are separate, which it'd be nice to replace them all, or at least get them all matching, but the budget doesn't stretch that far.
No, not yet anyway.
So it does leave kind of a bit of a quandary as to what we do. Do we just paint that one again? Because these we're going to polish back up, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going to have these nice and shiny original brass. These are very original windows, so we'll get these shiny again.
I think painting it will stop it standing out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, so I think that one that's the odd one.
It's going to have to be done, isn't it?
is going to have to be painted. It's just, might be a bit of experimenting to see what does end up looking best. Oh no, I've just dropped my screwdriver bit off the end.
In the canal?
Yes, I have got a magnet down there. I'll retrieve that later.
Oh mate!
Fortunately we've got all the screws out. So next job is, can we get a chisel behind there?
Oh, yeah.
Just make sure the glass doesn't drop out the back of it.
Yeah, because that's
yeah.
not magnetised.
So that came off far easier than what I expected. I'll now get the sanding disc on the angle grinder, just go over all that, clean it all up. I must say though, that's not as rusty as I thought it might be. There's sort of signs of rust, especially around the screw holes.
Yeah, it's going to need treating, but it's not that bad actually.
I expected to take it off and it'd be just
yeah,
full of rust.
that's good.
Yes,
That's good.
That's a positive. Fingers crossed them other ones come out just as easily.
I think they will.
And we've got a screw that's took the head off.
Oh.
It was going oh so well.
How are you going to get that out now then?
You have to drill it out. So small drill bit through the head of the drill. That'll in effect take the head off. Then it'll pull out.
Oh, okay.
You just have to be really careful because this is brass. If I start wiggling about with the drill bit, it's going to catch on the actual frame and damage the frame though. So that's where I need to be really careful.
Every day's a school day.
So I'm just checking there, that drill bit goes through that hole.
Right.
So that means if I get it centralised in there, it will allow the drill bit to go through, in effect drill the head off the screw, but not damage the actual frame.
Right, okay.
I think and there we go.
That's clever that.
You got it.
Yes.
So that will just want fully drilling out so that when we come to refit the window there's a hole for it to go in. But again, not too bad a condition. I've got a little spider there. We then repeated that process 3 more times to get the rest of the windows out, and then we were able to reach for the sander for the final time today and just clean up around those window apertures.
So next stage is I'm going to do aqua steel. I'm going to aqua steel the boat, put a thin layer all over it, which will turn the rust back into workable metal. Bear with me guys.
Just as Dawn's putting that aqua steel on down there, this area is really highlighted why we need to use that rust converter. because most of the boat that I've come to so far has had like little scratches that have gone rusty and stuff like that, but this section is really pitted. You can probably just sort of pick out in there all the little rust spots, just like thousands of them. So what I'm doing is I'm sanding it over as I've done the rest of the boat. Obviously don't want to aqua steel it, but I'm then guessing once the aqua steel's done its trick, this is going to end up quite rough again, so this will definitely need another good sand over. Filming and editing this video has been quite tricky, as obviously we want to show all the detail that's involved in preparing a boat for paint, but what we tried to avoid was having long repetitive scenes of just continually sanding the boat. However, the reality is there were hours and hours spent sanding the boat, and we have managed to condense that down into just a few minutes. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video and you'll join us next time, where hopefully there's a lot less sanding and we can get some filler and primer onto the boat and start taking steps to making it look better.